It's that simple. It's
Wow.
like something out of a bad soap opera.
Hey guys, in a recent community post, I let you know I was going to have Sheldon Lettich back on, and I wanted you to ask me certain things to ask him. And when he brought up, hey, does he know what happened between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Michel Qissi? And I'm like, that's actually a really good question. I'm really curious myself, right? I seen Michel Qissi in a recent interview, and he was very vague about what split them apart. But the good news is, the silver lining is that they're cool again, and they've been back together for a while, so that's the good news. But what drove that wedge back in the day? Sheldon Lettich knows the answer, and he's going to share that. Speaking of which, make sure to check out his new book, From Vietnam to Van Damme. Shares all kinds of cool info and insight into that world. Now, this book is filled with so much good information, but this specific story on whatever happened between Michel and Jean-Claude is not in there. So if you like this kind of content, please help support the channel. Hit the like button, guys. You're not getting this anywhere else. Subscribe to the channel, share the video, and buy Sheldon Lettich's book. Trust me, it's great. You might know something about this. This could be interesting. So with the book, obviously, we know kind of the downfall between, or it negatively affected the relationship between you and Van Damme and Dukes and the whole lawsuit with the Quest, etc. But do you know whatever happened with Van Damme and Michel Qissi? Because they came here together. They worked on Bloodsport. They worked on your Lionheart. Do you know what someone was asking if you know anything that happened to their
I
relationship?
know exactly what happened.
You do?
It's actually very simple and very simplistic, the reason that those two guys split. On Lionheart, we had a producer's assistant named Jeanette. She was British. She had the British accent, sounded very smart. And she was kind of smart, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the assistant to Ash Shaw. So Jeanette ended up falling into a relationship with Michel Qissi. Okay, so now Michel and Jeanette are an item. And Jeanette was not friendly to me, by the way. And she was not friendly to Jean-Claude either. But she was all over Michel. Michel was all over her. And Jean-Claude had bought a car. It was some kind of a Volkswagen Jetta, I believe. That for some reason, like having to do with credit, having to do with the fact that he didn't have an American passport, he couldn't buy the car under his own name.
We'll make up a name.
So he got Michel to buy the car. Jean-Claude paid the money for the car, but it was registered to Michel Qissi. So they had this Volkswagen Jetta. And apparently Jeanette had convinced Michel, and Michel sort of convinced himself too, that Jean-Claude owed him a lot more than what he was getting for elevating him to this position where he became a movie star. Because Michel was there from the very beginning, was with him on all the movies, on Bloodsport and Lionheart. He was there.
Of course, Kickboxer. I mean, he played Tong Po.
Kickboxer, he played Tong Po. When they couldn't find it, they couldn't find a real Asian guy who was nearly as intimidating as Michel Qissi. They couldn't find the right guy. They were looking. Jean-Claude didn't like the choices that he was seeing, so he came up with the idea of doing makeup on Michel and making him look like he was Thai.
I want to pull.
It worked perfect.
And then he brought him in to meet Mark DeSalle and said, "Mark, look, here's Tong Po." And Mark didn't realize it was Michel either, and so they ended up hiring Michel. And then Jean-Claude revealed to him, "By the way, that's Michel." So Michel was there for an awful lot of Jean-Claude's career climb, but had made him a vow years earlier. Michel, you're such a big help to me. If I ever make it big, I'm going to share half of everything with you.
Wow.
Okay? So Jeanette started whispering in his ear, he really hasn't done much for you at all compared to the promises he made. But I'm sure Michel told her about the promise to share half of everything. And you really need to demand more from Jean-Claude. He needs to pay you more. he needs to, you need to make him stick to this promise of giving you half of everything.
Hey, my brother done made me some money, so I'm gonna leave his ass in the damn street. Well, that's all right. That's all right. Go ahead with your bad self. We see how far your ass get without my help.
What it came down to was Jean-Claude wasn't hearing any of this.
Didn't make enough money?
Wait a minute.
Huh? You want some more?
Figured Michel was doing pretty good. He got hired on Lionheart and these other movies. He was making money. So no, I'm not going to give you half of everything. Jeanette convinced Michel that he should just keep that car. Okay. Yeah, basically, look, it's registered to you.
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Claude paid for it, but there's no record of him paying for it. It's basically your car.
Wow.
So basically, you should tell him you're not giving that car back. You're keeping it. And that's what really led to the split between Jean-Claude and Michel, was Jeanette convincing Michel not to give back the car.
Women.
It's that simple. It's
Wow.
like something out of a bad soap opera, but basically.
So did he end up keeping the Jetta, or did Van Damme get the Volkswagen Jetta back?
I can't remember what happened with that car. I think Jean-Claude just stopped asking for it after a while. He said, okay, fine. You want to keep it? You and I are done, but you can have the car. Okay, it's registered to you.
Wow.
So I think Michel was driving that car for a while. Yeah, it's not like they were no longer seeing eye to eye or anything like that. Basically, it was all about the car and Jeanette. So Jeanette actually married Michel. When all of this happened, I believe they were husband and wife.
Okay.
When she convinced him to keep the car. So the greed was really coming from Jeanette's direction. It wasn't Michel. And she convinced him, Jean-Claude owes you a lot more. You'll just take the car as a small token, but he owes you a lot more than that.
Interesting.
So that was pretty much the end of it right there. That's why they stopped working together.
Wow. I wonder where that car is now.
I don't know.
George, you sure I can't show you any other cars?
89 Volvo, that's the car for me. It's the one I want.
Oh, I got a little already.
NI, not interested.
It's got a few more miles on it, but the previous owner was John.
New car! Hey!
Seems like a strange choice.
Well, maybe so. But it was good enough for Mr. John.
John, the actor?
That's right. He just happened to be the previous owner of the vehicle.
You bought a car because it belonged to John?
No.
I think yes.
That's what they could use on the auction listing. The car that ruined Van Damme and
Right,
Michel's
right,
relationship. You get a little premium on it if you're trying to sell a used Volkswagen. That's interesting.
But
Shame.
Jean-Claude did really do a lot for Michel when you come right down to it, because people still love Michel as Tong Po in Kickboxer.
Yeah, and I still think he's capitalizing on that. I'm sure he's going to events as Tong Po, and people want autographs. And
he does. And he told me he tried to get a few movies set up with me, and he was saying, but I have to play Tong Po because people love Tong Po. People want to see Tong Po. Okay, I couldn't really help him with that, but he's still carrying a torch for Tong Po, and they've got Facebook sites too. Michel's got some. You can see there's a lot of Tong Po on those Facebook sites, even though he has done other movies, but still that's the one character that people associate him with. Like Stallone gets associated with Rocky and Rambo. Michel Qissi gets associated with Tong Po.
Yeah, and he played him, of course, in the sequel, and then I don't think Tong Po was in part 3, but then they had the fake Tong Po in part 4, which was Van Damme's other friend, Kamel
Krifa.
Yeah.
So Kamel Krifa tried doing it. Another Arab playing a Thai. Okay, because Kamel is from I think he's from Tunisia or something, and Michel's from Morocco. yeah, they both put on the Charlie Chan makeup and played Tong Po.
And didn't they have a funny reference to Tong Po in the Kickboxer reboot where I think Michel's like in jail and he say, "Hey, don't forget about me," but they just like leave him.
Right, yeah, that was his little cameo.
That's pretty funny.